Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes, sir. Then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes, sir. Then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Peace of Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Peace of Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Peace of Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Oh, work it out. You work it out for Mother Lisa.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by my compatriot and film analysis partner, BLA, Baselit Analyzer. How you doing today, sir?
So good to see you again here. I can't wait to get into this one.
This is going to be becoming a pretty much a bi-weekly occurrence, it feels like.
Yeah. This is going to be a good one. And shouts out to Caravaggio, who sponsored this one. This is a sponsor stream.
Yep.
And I'm really looking forward to this one because this is a kind of a forgotten movie in the adventure hero genre. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, major shout out to Caravaggio for sponsoring tonight's stream. Everybody give him a a thumbs up, a voice of appreciation in the chats. We do appreciate you, Caravaggio. God bless you, brother, and thank you for supporting both of our work. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit. It's kind of a mixed bag. We'll be discussing the epic of Beowulf, something that you are quite familiar with. We'll be discussing a little bit how that relates, why it's important historically, especially amongst English speakers, Old English. And we'll be discussing then the movie The 13th Warrior, which was a film that I actually had not seen. And I give it 2 thumbs up. It's actually a very good it's another one. This seems to be another occurrence too. It's another movie for the boys, right?
Yeah. It's definitely one for the boys. And there's a couple reasons for that. But in terms of the film, this is directed by John McTiernan, and McTiernan really can't go wrong as far as movies for the boys. I mean, he did Predator. I just covered The Hunt for Red October with Mark Hackard. So we're getting back into adventure hero territory. And of course, talking about the group of the fellas who have to go out on a quest and solve some problems, and they are led by a true epic hero alpha male.
Yes.
So I'm looking for this is gonna be a good
he
one.
is he is the ultimate sort of archetype of alpha, and the way he dies at the end of the film, just total stud.
He's this dude's totally jacked too. He's like twice as big as the other people. Even his own fellas, this is a tale of the Northmen. I think it's interesting that
AC says Mayo Chad.
There have been so many movies. There have been a lot of movies recently dealing with the Northmen. Of course, there was the movie The Northman, but the Viking hero Nordic man Northman genre seems to be having an uptick. There's a few reasons that are not so great for that, but this is getting into good territory. This is a group of pagans in the film, and of course, the movie The 13th Warrior is based on the Michael Crichton book Eaters of the Dead, which is based on Beowulf, the epic poem, Anglo-Saxon Old English epic poem. So Michael Crichton from Jurassic Park, from all of this sort of technotronic books and films that he did, he really went into a different genre here. And there was another movie of this made that was not great, and they scrapped the whole movie, and then he took the reins away again, and I guess got the rights back from his book and just changed the name from Eaters of the Dead for the film to The 13th Warrior. So and there's Christian symbolism in this. I mean, there's what's interesting is, you've covered this a lot recently, which is the coming to head between Islam and Christianity, which occurs in the film, but there's a different variation of it, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting that Islam does play a sort of central role in the film with Antonio Banderas, his character, Ahmed Ibn Fadlan.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of has his own sort of hero's journey in the film as well. Because, the hero's journey outside of Joseph Campbell, this is sort of a big thrust of the epic of Beowulf. And I think before we even get into the film or start talking about any specifics, maybe we could discuss a little bit about Beowulf and why Beowulf is certainly the premier and more important literary poem epic of the English language.
Yeah, so Beowulf, which was probably composed around 800 AD and then is in book form around 1000 AD, and there's one edition of the book. There's one copy of the book, and it's at the Bodleian Library in Oxford. And this is taught in every British literature class. I'm sure everybody here in high school probably covered this. If you were in college, you went into it. In college and in grad school, I actually took a class I took 2 classes, one on Beowulf, one on Icelandic literature, one on a different one on on the old English literature. And I have a guidebook here written by my 2 professors, Hugh McGinnis and Ivan Herbison. And these 2 fellas, basically the first day of class, they both in both of their classes, Herbison came in speaking Icelandic, and that was on the Icelandic sagas. They worked together on this Old English book, and Hugh McGinnis came in speaking in Old English, and then told us that basically our job for the rest of the semester was to translate Beowulf. So I had to translate the entire poem from Old English. And one of the things, this is an important text for me, because this book right here, the Seamus Heaney copy of Beowulf, his translation of Beowulf, came out right before I was trying to decide whether to go to Northern Ireland to go to Queen's University. And in the introduction, Seamus Heaney, I got the first edition of this, that had just come out. And in the introduction, he talks about Queen's University. So I decided that was a sign for me to go. So that's why I went. And I ended up studying at the Seamus Heaney Center for Poetry in the School of English at Queen's. And his translation is really great, because he kind of decided that the Old English, the Old English version didn't need to be literally translated into a modern English, and it actually worked better with a kind of Ulster Scots tone to it. So he used place names from Northern Ireland and from Ulster in order to ground the poem. And the poem is really, important for understanding English, because, not to get too into the weeds with this, but Old English,
get in the weeds.
Saxon comes from the Angles and the Saxons who invade the British Isles. This is during and after the fall of Rome. So
right.
We had a kind of Celtic Britain. We had an Iron Age Britain. Then we had a Roman Britain who gave us the name Britain, Londinium.
Yep.
And then we had the Vikings come in, and the Vikings, especially with the Angles and the Saxons, is where we get the name English. And then we have a long series of wars, especially going into the first millennium, where the Danes, the Saxons are all vying for power. You covered this recently because you covered Alfred the Great and the kind of consolidation of Britain under Alfred against Saxons. And then eventually what happens is the Normans come in at 1066, and they defeat the Dane law, the old Danish order. And then it turns into a kind of Anglo-French language dominated, and then eventually becomes Old English becomes Middle English, and Middle English eventually in the Renaissance becomes Modern English. But the reason this is important is because Beowulf represents the sort of nexus point between paganism and Christianity. And some of the poem, especially some of the other poems that are extant from the time, scholars even think that they were pagan written. We don't know the authors. We refer to the Beowulf poet as the Beowulf poet. We don't know his name. And they think that monks saved the transcripts, and then they added to the poems, and that they then became a kind of mixture of pagan and Christianity. What I think probably happened is that because this existed again at this nexus point, that it's simply that the poet's mind has a kind of confluence of these two things that are happening. This is a great period in history where they come from a cultural paganism, and then they eventually it morphs and changes with a Christian spirituality, and the two things represent this clash of cultures, clash of thoughts in one poem, and then eventually Christianity wins out. But what's important here is that culturally, especially in terms of the Norsemen, the Northmen, Beowulf really gives us everything in English literature for the hero's journey and for understanding of a British nation. So in terms of an epic, people usually associate an epic with, something long, a longer piece of literature. But a couple of the things that determine an epic are one, that the epic has to have an epic hero. They have to have a protagonist who represents the thoughts, the feelings, the values, the virtues of what's later going to become his nation. Also, the epic hero has to struggle against a supernatural foe. There has to usually be a series of 3 different trials, as if he's going to become a saint. And then a lot of times the epic hero has to fall. This is where the epic hero transcends into what becomes a Christ-like hero, because the epic hero has to give himself body and soul for his people. He has to really sacrifice himself, and to want to. And it's an honor for him to do such. And he has to fight against an equal or a greater foe in order for his people to survive. And he wants to do that. So Beowulf is amazing, because when you read it, if you understand Old English, it's very similar to German. I mean, it's German. Old English is a Germanic language.
Right.
Romantic language like Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, French. It's a Germanic language with other languages kind of thrown into the hodgepodge, Latin, Greek, but it is essentially a Germanic language that morphs into Middle English and then eventually into modern English. But that also shows us the kind of mindset of the protagonist, of the hero. And Beowulf is great because it says at the very beginning of Beowulf, we have basically we Beowulf is a Geat. So the interesting thing about Beowulf is that it's not even British. Beowulf is a Geat. So
Right.
he's a Swede and he goes to Denmark to fight.
Right.
He doesn't go to England. But it's an Old English Anglo-Saxon work of verse. And so what happens is his group of warriors end up called over to this guy called Hrothgar, who's the king of the Geats, or of the Danes.
Yep.
And they are being terrorized by some sort of supernatural foe that they call Grendel. And they ask for a warrior to come and save them. And so they do. And Beowulf first has to prove himself. He tells a number of different stories. This is echoed in Shakespeare later took this in Julius Caesar. There's a swimming competition there. And this also shows one of the values of Beowulf. Beowulf is a superhero in the sense that he has two superpowers, which are very unusual. One is that he has an unbreakable grip, which is going to be important because in Beowulf, he has to fight against Grendel with no sword. And every time he gets a sword called Hrunting, which is a magical sword, but it melts when he fights his mother, and he fights underwater in an underwater lair. And that goes to the second superpower that he has. The second superpower is that he can hold his breath for like an incredible amount of time, like a whole day. And this is supposed to convey the fact that the Vikings were mariners. They were seagoing people, and they succeeded where others failed in terms of going out onto the sea, not being afraid of the waves. They believed that if they perished in the waves, that it was an honor for them. And this led to this. Eventually, this spirit is adopted and absorbed into the British people in terms of their navy, which we covered with Master and Commander, right? Which is and that we sort of have inherited here, this sort of navigational adventure spirit. But he has to then eventually he grows older, 50 years pass, and he fights a dragon. And the dragon is a clear symbol of revelation, a kind of satanic creature that has come finally to decimate the population. And that's at the point where he has to really sacrifice himself for his people, and he dies, but his people live on. And it's this thing that we get in all great literature that every nation, this is the last thing I'll say, every great nation has an epic poem. So the Greeks, of course, have the Iliad and the Odyssey. Rome had the Aeneid. The Spanish have El Cid. The French have Roland, and so forth. But with the British and with Beowulf, what happens is that, again, we have a character who sacrifices himself for his people, and that he lives on, like Achilles discusses in the Iliad. Better to live like a lion for a day than a lamb is a lifetime.
Right.
He even though Beowulf lives for a long time, it doesn't indicate in the poem that he has children. So he sort of is a father to his people rather than an actual father to a child. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote down kind of 4 main points of themes and meanings out of the Beowulf epic that will relate to the movie The 13th Tribe. And you mentioned one that I'm not going to speak to specifically, but the dragon. We're going to see a reiteration of this, especially the satanic features of the fireworm and the 13th warrior, where this group of people who dress like bears present themselves as animals. The people believe that they have these sort of supernatural powers. And they come and they light everything on fire, and you can see the flames of this, a whole litany of people on horseback riding your way, lighting everything on fire. And eventually they realize that they're just men. But that the reiteration of the dragon is sort of repackaged as the fireworm people. But here are my 4 main themes, and I'm going to go one at a time, and feel free to chime in, because you are certainly more of the Beowulf expert than myself. I did read it a few years ago, but I did not reread the whole thing again. I just took from memory and kind of wrote down some points. So here is the four that I wrote down. The first one was heroism and the warrior ethic. The poem glorifies the warrior's courage and strength. Beowulf's heroism is defined not only by his physical prowess, as you mentioned, his grip, which he rips the arm of Grendel off his damn body and
as a trophy.
the first section, because there's like 3 sections of the Beowulf: Grendel, Grendel's mother, and then the dragon.
Yeah.
But also by his sense of duty, honor, and protection of his people. His battles against Grendel, Grendel's mother, and the dragon are symbolic of the eternal struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, I would say that one of the interesting things about Beowulf is that it starts with its discussion of Grendel as an overt satanic lineage creature.
Right.
So I'm just going to read one little part here when it talks about Grendel. This says, let's see. He was spawned in that slime, conceived by a pair of those monsters born of Cain, murderous creatures banished by God, punished forever for the crime of Abel's death. The Almighty drove those demons out, and their exile was bitter. Shut away from men, they split into 1,000 forms of evil, spirits and fiends, goblins, monsters, giants, a brood forever, opposing the Lord's will, and again defeated. Mm-hmm. So it shows that in his very nature, he is a satanic, demonic creature who's going to be opposed completely to Beowulf. That's the Burton Raffle translation. The other weird thing I'll say about this is that this is a little esoteric here, but Beowulf is interesting because it's written again in Anglo-Saxon, and it's an unrhymed poem, of course, because most of the epics are unrhymed. They're unrhymed. They are either blank verse later on with Shakespeare, like in his plays, but they're unrhymed poems. But the way that you tell an Anglo-Saxon verse just from looking at it is like, if you're looking at Homer, you have Latin or Greek hexameters. Here there's a split down the middle of the page usually, and you can kind of see it right there. You'll have 2 different sides going down the text, and it's not so clear here, but in the middle of every line, there's a space. It's like as if you have a tab in the middle of every line. And that shows you that you have, first of all, form plus content equals meaning. So you have you read the line across, but you have 2 separate, it's basically telling you that there are 2 separate characters whose body, their lifeline is parallel until one is going to emerge. Mm. And this space in the line is called a caesura. And they called it this because the only thing they had to compare it to was the lifeline of Caesar. So Caesar's lifeline is going along and then gets cut short in the middle. So the space in the middle of the lifeline of the poem, of the line of verse, is called a caesura. Yeah, it's an empty space. And that is what suffices. And usually you get alliteration on either sides of the line that match it instead of having a rhyme. Yeah, and the poem begins with the famous word "what," which is untranslatable, HWAET, which is untranslatable and means something like wait or yo or listen up, because it's told by a poet, a warrior poet in the classic sense, who is shouting out to his people, here you go, here's a story, and I'm going to tell the story. Listen up.
Right. Yeah, the point 2 that I pointed out was fate and mortality. The concept of fate is central to the poem. Characters often acknowledge that their lives are governed by fate, and Beowulf's acceptance of his own death reflects the stoic resignation typical of the warrior ethos. So
yeah, you just covered stoicism.
Exactly. Yeah, that's I
right.
got it. I had to throw it in there a little bit.
Yeah.
It was fresh on the noggin.
That's right.
And then number 3 is kingship and loyalty. The poem emphasizes the responsibilities of a king to his people and the loyalty expected in return. Beowulf is portrayed as the ideal king who sacrifices himself for the safety of his kingdom. The poem also explores the potential for instability and the decline of societies after the death of a strong leader. And as you're mentioning, I mean, that right there, we can see the motifs that would be indicative of Christ and the Christian themes undergirding what it is to be an epic hero: kingship, loyalty to people, self-sacrifice, and ultimately dying for something much greater than yourself. And, obviously it's not a Christian epic per se,
Mhm.
but you can see that theme. And I was kind of thinking about, I wonder if Beowulf and the archetypes allowed the Anglo-Saxons to adopt Christianity a little bit easier because it kind of made sense.
Yeah, you can see that the Beowulf poet, and what I've always thought about this person, and this is great because this is an example of how we don't need to know anything about the author, and it's the work that lives on. One thing that I always thought about the Beowulf poet is that he lives in such an interesting time where there's this all of these things are being jammed together. I mean, the Icelanders Christianized in I think 1000 the year 1000 all together
Yeah.
at the All thing,
Right.
and before this we had all these various groups vying for power. And the Beowulf poet, what he kind of does is it's like I tend to not think that the monks had anything to do with this besides saving the books. They didn't add to the poems because this represents a poet who was influenced by this great confluence of events. All of his people going back had been pagans, but all of a sudden he's a Christian and he's writing what his view of a Christian hero would be.
Right.
So it's not a holy book.
Right.
You know, it's a guy writing a poem, a work of creative writing that is going to later function as a kind of epic an epic story of what's later going to become his people. And that's one of the other motifs of Beowulf and even of the 13th Warrior, which is the importance of the family and the importance of a culture to stick together into a cohesive unit before they're torn apart by outsiders.
Right. And that warrior ethos. I mean, the Anglo-Saxons were at first were invited in the British Isles as protection because the Celtic peoples were getting annihilated by invaders.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of the warrior people that they allowed, hey, you can come, you know, have your plot of land, grow your people. And then when the bad guys come, you guys have to go to war. And then eventually they got so powerful and numerous, they're like, okay, well, this country's ours now.
Yeah. 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 When the pagans first got to England and they were sacking the monasteries, you know, the first tales of it back were like, this is so easy. What's up with these people? Like, why don't they have swords? And then eventually they come to realize that, you know, that burying all your riches and you know, going to Valhalla with the demons, I guess, is not such a good idea. They need Christ. One of the other things about the epic hero that later translates into the tragedy, the idea of a tragedy, even whether it's a Shakespearean tragedy or a tragedy in terms of great literature, is that, you know, we have to delineate between something being called tragic and an actual tragedy in art, which is that we never see a tragic story about common people. It's always a leader, and you have to have someone who is either royal or who's a general or someone high up who falls from a state. They fall either into death or exile. So it has to be a person who falls from a high place to a low place. And the whole point of the 13th Warrior, I think one of the things they get right is that even though they apparently have a leader at the end of the film, we see that these are bog people. Like, they're literally bog people living underground in a cave, led by
cannibals too, right? That's part of the chaos that they bring, is that they'll eat you after, you know, they slaughter your people.
Yeah, led by a witch woman with a witch cult with a gorgon head and a snake around her neck and a big statue of the naked, the naked woman.
Yes,
lady.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect for goddess worship.
Yeah.
And then the last point I had on regards to the themes and meanings of Beowulf was obviously good versus evil, and that Beowulf's battles are more than just physical confrontations. They are symbolic of the struggle between order and chaos, which plays out in the 13th Warrior as well. Civilization versus barbarism. Again, the cannibalism, the fireworm people, and the monsters he faces, Beowulf, are not just threats to physical safety, but are the embodiments of moral and social disorder. As you mentioned with Grendel, literally having a sort of satanic lineage to who his identity is. Again, emphasizing that.
Yeah, Token Study in the chat points out he points out something good, which is that Grendel always attacks at a time of merriment. And that's important because what happens is when people get into when they come to the mead hall and they're brought together, the mead hall functions as like in America, that would be like a wigwam or something, but it's not made of mud. This is an oaken building with iron, iron fastenings. The thing is very strong. It's supposed to be an exterior symbol of the inner strength of the people, and they all gather in this one place. And Grendel always attacks them at a time of merriment because he hates merriment. He hates togetherness. He hates the traditions that they have, and he's trying to tear them apart in the darkness of night. And one thing that they left out of the 13th Warrior, and I can see why they left it out, because people don't tend to understand this in the modern era, is that Beowulf in the poem has a lot of braggadocio. He tells his own story. He's got to be big. He has to compare his story to Wulfgar's story. He tells his own version of I'm the best. And I think probably to modern audiences, this sounds like he has hubris or something, but that's not what it is. It's that no one else is going to tell his story, and he really doesn't even need his men to kill Grendel. He has all of this stuff in himself. Somebody earlier pointed out he doesn't have an interior monologue. He actually, that's kind of true, that he doesn't seem to have an interior monologue in the poem, but that's only because his inner state is completely exterior. He's totally transparent for his people. He's totally transparent with his thoughts. He tells them what he's there to do. He's there to be a hero. He's there to save them.
Right.
He's the guy to do it.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's probably something that we need more of in the world now.
Right. And, Beowulf, as you mentioned, I mean, the historical importance, linguistic significance, cultural reflection, influence on later literature, as you said, even moving into the Shakespearean period and understanding what is an epic hero, and then the symbol of national identity. This is why Beowulf has had such a resounding impact and importance within history, especially for the English people.
Oh. Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really is unbelievably influential. And just like English, look at it, sort of mirrors the importance of English dominating over other languages, especially in the latter part of the second millennium. I mean, English dominates in terms of language and culture. There was a brief resurgence with the Napoleon's Continental Army, but that's gone. I mean, the last time that, before this, I mean, King Richard spoke a sort of Anglo-Norman French in the language of the court, but eventually this becomes Middle English, and then modern English dominates, and that mirrors the English domination of the seas, and that all conveys the sort of spirit of what Beowulf has within the epic poem. So I think it's a really important work of literature, and it's cool. It's an adventure story. So
yeah, and here's my little summary, my last summary on Beowulf. So you'll be grading my paper here. If you guys don't know, BLA actually teaches Beowulf, and he just did his school semester, I guess the summer semester you call it, before fall break. So BLA's our guy. So he may be marking me off. I may be getting a bit of a lower grade, but I wrote that Beowulf is not just an epic tale of heroism. It's a complex reflection of the human condition, addressing themes such as courage, mortality, the eternal struggle between good and evil. Its significance lies in its ability to convey the values of an ancient culture while still resonating with modern readers. As a foundational work of English literature, it's an impact on the development of language, literary tradition, cultural identity, and that cannot be overstated.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that anybody who's interested in this, I mean, especially in terms of this stuff is really great in terms of reading things that are, if you're sick of the poison of all the stuff that has come out in the kind of postmodern era in terms of literature and now film. This is a great antidote to that. I mean, again, you just covered you did the Stoic stream, you did a stream on King Alfred. You can read, I've got a book on King Alfred here. You can read Marcus Aurelius, but reading the Icelandic sagas in translation or reading the Anglo-Saxon narrative poems are so amazing. The language in them is so amazing. It's just full of strength. And these guys, the themes of these poems are basically that the speaker has a family at home. They're comfortable at home, but they know they have to go out and do their duty. They have to get on a boat and go out into the wastelands of the sea, breaking oars on the crest of a wave in a world hung with icicles. They have to go out and they have to struggle because it's what makes them a man. They have to struggle spiritually, they have to struggle mentally, they have to struggle physically, because they have to provide for their family. And if they don't do that, their family won't eat.
Right.
So they have to go and do these things. And when they're out there, they want to be home. But when they're home, they want to be back out there. So they're never content. This is really fantastic stuff, because this is what it means. You know, when people talk about what it means to be happy, and that's kind of a young man's game, or almost, it can almost be a feminine thing to say as you get older, because everybody wants to be happy, but it depends on what you mean by happiness. You know, I mean,
on what you mean.
Yeah, joy and fulfillment can come out of extreme hardship. Everybody knows, every man knows that the things that you go through in life, if you struggle, like think about sports. If you struggle on a sports team as a teenager, and you're out there at practice every day, and it's cold and muddy and rainy, and you're getting hit and all this stuff, but you're with your boys, then those are the good times that you remember. That's what brings you together. That's what makes you a man.
Right. Well, same thing with people that came back from Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, just brings it back to the 21st century. Yeah. You know, while they're in the combat zone, they're thinking about their wives, their families, getting back home. But then once they're home, the monotony of regular daily life is almost too excruciating. They'd rather be back with, because the camaraderie, I mean, the shared experience you have with men, whether it be on a great sports team, maybe you guys win state in basketball or football, achieving a collective goal with a group of other men, that can't be replaced with anything else. And obviously, full physical combat to the death is the ultimate experience of camaraderie of a group of people, and being able to survive and withstand those conditions.
Yeah, so many people are afraid to lose. They're afraid to struggle at all, I think. And we always hear that thing from, you know, our parents and our grandparents about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and, you know, it's, you got to get back on the horse and all that stuff. But what they said is true, because you're not always going to win. If you're in a fight, you're not always going to win. It's sometimes it's about how much you can get hit and get back up again. That is the determining mark in what makes you brave, or what makes you a hero, what makes you a man. And, you know, look at the end result of these epic heroes. You know, they die. Right. They don't live forever on Earth. They don't look at, I mean, I guess King Arthur would be sort of an aberration from that, because he gets a mortal wound and then he goes off to Avalon. But the implication is that he goes off to heaven. It's not that he is. It's that he dies. He dies for his people. He receives a mortal wound. He goes off, and that people want him. They want to think that he's there and he'll come back and save them. But that again conveys the sense that they've learned from him, and that they now have to do the work that he's taught them, or that he symbolized.
Right. No, I think that's a great point, because there's again, I'm not as sophisticated as you in regards to movie and literary analysis, but the epic hero in, let's say, contemporary movies, not dying at the end, but living a sort of utopian or happy ever after. I mean, this wasn't the way that the ancient world would understand it, because that's not the world that they live. That's not reality. And the self-sacrifice, you know, the recognition of death is something that our contemporary culture doesn't want to deal with. And it kind of puts it away at the side. And Christ is a figure that brings that to the forefront. But again, these epics, just like Beowulf, that's also symbolizing that death isn't something to shy away from. You know, even in the movie that we're going to get into, The 13th Warrior, death is totally embraced. I mean, and there's a scene in which they're getting ready to ride off to help the king that has requested for their aid, and they're kissing their wives, expecting to die and whatever's going ready to come, and their wives are okay with it. They're happy with it, because this is a greater purpose. That, you know, death isn't something to be averted from. It's the worthy death that is sought for.
Right. Also, if they stay at home and stay with their wives, then they basically switch roles with their wives. Their wives also want them to go. Right. You know, you're the man. You know, you're the man that they married, because you go off and do these things. If you're at home baking the bread and making the muffins all day with the wife, then you've lost the thing that attracted you to her in the first place. Look at for example, look at the Iliad as one example of what you were just talking about. In the Iliad, you know, you have a hero in Achilles who is literally a demigod. He's dipped in the river Styx. You know, he is invincible. And how does he die? He gets shot in the most pathetic way possible in his ankle by an arrow, right, from Paris or whatever, who's a total dweeb. And but he faces it. and he goes out for vengeance for his nephew. Look at who he fights to the death in front of the gates of Troy. Hector is also, even though his body is desecrated by Achilles, he's later brought back by Priam, and he's given back over to him because he respects him because of Priam's leadership, and because Hector, who's fighting for his brother, he knows he's going to die when he fights Achilles. He knows that, but he goes out and he fights anyway because he has to stand up for his people. He symbolizes his people.
Right. Yeah, the courage, right? And that's going to come into play here when we discuss the movie. Is there anything you want to say about Beowulf before we move on to because the next piece of notes that I wrote down, and I told you before the stream, 4 points that I see a relationship or direct relationship between the Epic of Beowulf, which we just covered, with moving into the 13th Warrior.
Just that here's an example of what I was talking about with the split lines.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was looking up. I was trying to get an image, but none of them.
Yeah,
it just kept showing the original manuscript.
They're split right there in the middle, and this is one of the Beowulfs today. If you want to read Beowulf, I would read the Seamus Heaney translation or the Burton Ralph translation. If you want to read,
how many translations you got?
I got a bunch of them. I mean, I did translations.
You just pulled out like 3 Beowulf translations.
I've got like 27 translations of Rimbaud in the other room. If you want to read more of Seamus Heaney, I know this is poetry, but if you want to read more of Seamus Heaney, he's got a great poem called North in his book North, which is amazing. This is like as if the Viking era became the modern era. There he is with his. There's a Seamus Heaney signature, Nobel Prize winner, 1995.
Man,
there you go. There's
you move in high circles, man. You got to introduce me.
Here's the Beowulf translation, and actually, this is a great book on the High Kings of Ulster, but it's dealing with sort of Celtic, pre-Christian kingdoms. That's a great book. It's called The High Kings, and then I even have something akin to the Antonio Banderas character in the movie, and this is the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. This is the 1937 edition in a box, so I never really opened it, but this is the Rubaiyat, which is very famous. There are a lot of, that's not like a rare book, I don't think anymore, this edition, but it's beautiful, and it was used by the pre-Raphaelites and a lot of the 19th century writers. It was because of its sort of illuminated text, and and it is one of the things, along with the Scheherazade, Scheherazade and the Arabian Nights, that really was interesting to the English in the 19th century because of its exotic nature. And that's sort of what plays a role in the 13th Warrior. So that's it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start moving towards the movie here. And the first thing we already kind of mentioned it. I mean, there's only so much to say, but the hero's journey, Beowulf, is that how they pronounce the guys? I mean, the Beowulf character, and is it? I can't remember how they pronounced it.
Yeah, they changed it. I'm just going to call him Beowulf the whole time because
we'll call him Beowulf. I mean, it's clear the way that it's spelled differently, and it's clearly a fictional character, but it's also clear what they're trying to do. We'll call him Beowulf just for the lack of confusion here. So, the hero's journey, Beowulf of the 13th Warrior, is a heroic figure who steps forward to face a monstrous threat that ordinary men cannot overcome, a la the Epic of Beowulf. His stoic bravery, there it is again, physical prowess, and sense of duty align him closely with the iconic and legendary figure of Beowulf. So the hero's journey is my first point, in which it's obviously the shared similarities between the movie and the poem.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the movie, we have 2 heroes' journeys going on. One is the what you call the scop or the shop, and he's the kind of bard figure who's, in this instance, the 13th Warrior, going to be an Arabic speaking poet.
Yeah,
in the voice of Antonio Banderas, and he has his own hero's journey, and it's interesting because his hero's journey is, there's a kind of trade-off here. He kind of tries to influence the group of Northmen that he meets in terms of something something artistic. He teaches Beowulf how to write. By the way, Beowulf is brilliant in the movie because he shows him once how to write the Arabic text, and he remembers it, except for one part where he gets to the beach.
He's another sort of polyglot, didact, figure who
Yeah,
can.
but it's really showing the audience this push that was pre Big Nine, which is it's interesting. This is pre Big Nine because it's showing that this thing that we always learn, which is at the time that the civilized nations were the Arabic nations and that the European nations were the dark ages. But there's a trade off here. The trade off is that he's pretty feminine in the movie.
Yes,
he's I mean, he's wearing his robes, but he goes over there and there's a scene which is kind of hammy, where they're like spitting into the bowl that they're washing and all that stuff, and he kind of pushes it away with one finger. When he meets the woman, he's got these little cuts on his face, right? And she says, like, you scream, that's the sound a woman makes. So he learns, he learns what it means to be a man and what it means to give himself in battle. And he actually learns a lot of intellectual things from the group because there's a one scene with the duel, and he learns about strategy from the other guys. So
that's one of the really interesting pieces of the film is that the connection with Beowulf is the leader of the group, but we're really in the movie, we're looking at this whole scenario through the eyes of Antonio Banderas, the Arab, and how he's coming from a culture and a society of opulence. Of one of the things that the Northmen were astounded by was that he was able to produce meaning from letters, from script, words, concepts. And, as you said, the scene where they have this big bowl and there's water in it, they drink the water, they swish it around, then they spit it back in the bowl, they hand the bowl to somebody else, and then they drink it, swish it around. And it shows like hygiene, the types of clothes he's wearing. These, the Northmen haven't washed in days, and you can tell he's very in a pristine state with different clothes each day. So it is demonstrating that contrast. And then in addition, you're talking about the femininity or whatnot, but like he has a smaller horse, and the guys are kind of chastising him because he wasn't expected that the Oracle, and we're going to move through the movie as we always do. I have it pulled up. We'll click through it here. But there's a scene in which they go to the Oracle, this woman, and she chooses the 13th warrior to go on this trip. She chooses the Arab guy, who he obviously wasn't expecting, and probably the Northmen weren't expecting, but they have faith in the Oracle. So if she said it, then he got to go. He has a little tiny horse. I mean, not tiny, but it's much smaller than the Northmen, who are on like these Clydesdales, and he's on like this jumping pony, all white horse. But he ends up earning their respect because of the agility. So it's a different attribute than maybe they're forceful, they're muscular, they're direct in what they're doing. And he demonstrates the agility of his horse and eventually earns the respect of the other men.
Yeah, he rides a pale horse, and he is there to, defeat the bad guys at the end, which is interesting. He also, because his horse is smaller, it has agility, like you said, it's agile. He changes his sword down into it. He can't even lift the Northman's sword, but he changes it into a scimitar. And he also, again, he learns from them. Like there's a scene, another scene where he gets cut and he tells the woman, I just need water. I need pure water to put on this. And she tells him, because she tells him this is cow urine. And he says, no, get this away from me. But then she says, okay, fine. Wait for it to pus tomorrow, and then you'll have a fever, and then see how you feel. And he says, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe you do know something. So he kind of learns from it, because we think of the Arabs, with medicine in the Middle Ages, but yeah, there's definitely a trade-off here. And also going to the Oracle, it's like the wise words of the Oracle. It's like, wait a minute. So you saw 12 guys and they needed a 13th, and the 13th is unconventional and probably has some skills that they don't have. That's not that much of a stretch.
True.
Right. True. But they don't, but in the context of the movie, certainly they don't know this. And he seems like a total, this guy's kind of I don't know, he's kind of soft, even the things he wears he just looks soft when he's riding his little pony around.
He's covered in silks, and these guys are, in handmade garments that, very much rougher, standing the test of time compared to his, silk attire.
Yeah.
The other point that I had in regard to the relationship, which we kind of already mentioned, is the monstrous threat, right? So the Wendell serve as the film's equivalent of the monsters in Beowulf, and this portrayal as primitive, almost mythic creatures who live in caves and come out at night, who are cannibals, who sort of worship some type of symbolic serpent or worm-like fire deity, is reminiscent of Grendel and his mother. So, I mean, that's an obvious connection there, and we've kind of already hit it, but just wanted to make that point. And then number 3 I had is the final battle, the climax of the film, where Beowulf, or our Beowulf archetype, leads his warriors into the heart of Wendell's lair, parallels Beowulf's descent into Grendel's mother's underwater cave, as you mentioned. And then Beowulf's victory, though it cost him his life, is similar to Beowulf's final battle with the dragon, where the hero also meets his end. And in the film, we're going to see that Beowulf, our Beowulf archetype, he defeats the witch. So they're told, okay, well, if you're gonna take out these Wendell people, you need to kill the sort of head witch, the priestess, the goddess-like figure that they have, and then you need to take out the lead chief warrior. And they go and they descend into a handful of them, descend into the cave, get to the very bottom of this layer. They find the goddess thing that they're worshiping. They find the witch. He cuts the witch's head off at the same time in which she's able to stab him with some type of talon that has some type of poison on it.
Yes.
And so
she's basically any woman at Burning Man, I guess.
She kind of looks like it, right? She's got you know, the kind of the tattoos, the dreadlocks, kind of, you know, she definitely, you'll see it when we click through the video. She looks like she came from Burning Man. So Beowulf, anyways, he's incapacitated, he's dying, and he's able to salvage a little bit of strength right at the end of the movie to, in fact, kill the chief warrior in hand-to-hand combat, which is the sort of height of the film. And of course, he dies right after that. And we're going to show you all this, but it is clearly, the final battle is a clear reference, again, back to Beowulf and the way that the epic ends.
Yes, sir.
And then the fourth one I had was the culture clash. So the presence of Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an outsider to Norse culture, adds a layer of cultural commentary that is not present in the original Beowulf. His character offers a perspective on Viking culture that highlights its warrior ethos, values the loyalty amongst its people, and the blend of pagan and emerging Christian beliefs similar to the cultural tension in Beowulf.
Yeah, the only culture clash in the Beowulf text is the fact that the world is run at this point by Northmen, essentially. And we have, you know, I mean, think of it. I mean, there is a clash amongst these cultures who seem, what's the word, homogenous.
Yeah.
In that they're all sort of Celtic, Viking. They come from Central Europe, but they fan out all through Europe. So we have the Geats, the Shields, the Picts, the Anglo-Saxons, the Scots, the
Celts, the Irish,
the Normans,
the Gaels.
Yeah. And these are the guys who were the, what do they call them? The Baltic Vikings. They are the only ones who made their way all the way down south and ended up in Kiev, ended up with the Rus. There's an episode of Pawn Stars, of all things, where this guy
reference I wasn't expecting.
He brings in a series of he's got Viking gold, you know, and they say this might be legit. And when the Viking expert comes in, he says, well, this is Baltic Viking, so this isn't worth as much because it's an imitation of the original Viking and it's made with sort of lesser materials. But when there is actual Viking material, there goes DPH. He'll come back. Are we still with you? You guys are still with me? I think I'm okay. Yeah, here we are. It's my show now. Come on in, caller. Now, when they're selling the original Viking gold, you know, forged jewelry, that's worth a lot more than the Baltic Viking jewelry is. So, look, hey, listen, while DPH is coming back in, I think his connection died. If anybody wants to support, if you're watching me on my channel, of course, you can support through PayPal, Cash App. You can hit Super Chats. We'll get to those at the end. Also, you can support DPH through Super Chats on his channel, Church of the Eternal Logos. I want to thank DPH for doing this co-sponsored stream with me, this sponsored stream by Caravaggio. So thanks to Caravaggio. Let me make sure that I'm still rolling here too. Hold on. Let me make sure that I'm still going. Yeah, I'm still going. So that's probably DPH something. Maybe there's a storm. Maybe it got knocked out or whatever. Yeah. Oh, he said just got booted from the stream. Hold on. Let me check and see if he'll be back in a minute. Okay. So so what we're going to go into here is, again, we're going to go into the 13th Warrior. The thing that we're not mentioning here is the actual text that this is taken from. This is Eaters of the Dead. And what's really interesting is that Eaters of the Dead, again, is a text that Michael Crichton wrote. Michael Crichton, of course, is the writer of the Andromeda Strain and Jurassic Park. And all, everybody knows Michael Crichton, but he's sort of a psychotronic, a technotronic, technological writer. And what's interesting is that this represents something that's the total opposite. There was a text that was a fake writer in the 19th century that people thought this was Eaters of the Dead. There was a fake text that came out, but the Latin translation, even of the writer's name, meant fake writer. But this caused a stir. It's kind of like when the big controversy came out with the Taliesin text, which was supposedly a Arthurian era text written by a poet. And there is a Taliesin, but this was a fake text that came out. Occasionally we get fake literature that comes out, but that inspired Michael Crichton to write a real book called Eaters of the Dead, which then, of course, became the movie. So
sorry about that.
It's all right. I kept it rolling.
Yeah, all of a sudden my web browser here just went blank. I'm like, what the heck? I appreciate that. It seems for some reason when we stream, I have weird tech glitches, but thank you for holding everything down.
I was holding down the operation here, and I was letting the people know that if they want to support the operation, they can support you through super chats right there in the links. They can support.
Absolutely. Well, you as well. So anybody watching, feel free. When BLA do these sponsored streams, we stream to both of our channels. So feel free, support BLA with PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, whatever is convenient. If you guys have any questions or comments, you can send them to me on Streamlabs, Dono Chat, or YouTube, or on YouTube for BLA as well. We'll address all those at the end of the stream, just to not break up the flow and the continuity. But yeah, we're gonna dive into the movie here in just a second. I had 3 more points in regards to themes and symbolism, and you put in anything that you want to add to it, and then we'll start diving into the movie here. The second point I had in regards to themes and symbolism of the movie. Now we're talking specifically about the 13th Warrior here. Is we've kind of hit at it. It's the outsider's perspective. This is kind of the unique dimension that the movie adds outside of the Beowulf epic, and that's Ahmad Ibn Fadlan is an outsider, provides a lens in which the audience can view Viking culture. His transformation from a reluctant participant to a respected warrior reflects a journey of understanding and integration, emphasizing themes of cross-cultural exchange and a universality of certain values such as bravery, courage, and loyalty.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, the movie is great because, especially the ending sequence, when he's waving goodbye to his buddy, who calls him, "That's right, my lad, my son." The first guy that he comes in contact with when he leaves, because again, this is something that I think that, there's so much that divides us in life in terms of all the squabbles that we have in our daily lives. The person you don't get along with at the office or whatever, who's unlike you. But we have to, all literature, I've said this so many times on my channel, that all literature, really, all art is centered on 2 things. Why are, our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. What are we doing here? What's our purpose here? Why are we here? And how are we going to get along while we're here? What are we supposed to do that? Where do we draw the line at being walked all over and we push our values versus where do we have to, fight for a common goal or whatever it is? And this movie kind of provides a weird, good example of that, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like you hinted at, the last scene is the Viking calling him his son. He's telling him to pray for me on his travels back. And he's saying, well, we got multiple gods, so I'll pray to all of them for you to get home. And, he's obviously a Muslim, so he's monotheistic. But it hints at, and again, especially in the ancient world, that it wasn't, these cultures weren't isolated. They were mingling with each other and learning from each other. In this particular period of history, around the turn of the first millennium, very interesting time in history. I mean, you got the Byzantine
Yes.
Empire, you got the rise of Islam, you have the fall of the Khazars, you have the conversion of the Vikings, the Rus, the beginnings of the Russian people. You have the, just a couple hundred years before, you have the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. So this is a monumental time, and that will become, the identities of Europe still today. Russia is Orthodox, the Catholic heritage of Western Europe. All this stuff is kind of happening at this point.
Yeah, I think it also provides an insight into the fact that we're kind of past the point where people look at Northmen and Vikings as like, the Wagnerian Viking with the horns on the helmet. Everybody knows that's not a thing, and that, the Vikings were just these savages living somewhere. We're sort of past that in terms of popular understanding. But it does show you that although the Vikings lacked a writing system, and they did have runes, they did write, they did have runes and rune stones. Of course, that was usually reserved for for certain people in their society, and that runes kind of cross over from shaman into medicine men into lawyers, and there's a weird crossover in terms of that also is reflected in their pantheon and their mythology with Odin. But it also shows you that the Northmen, they were the people that were going outside of their villages and that were branching out into the world and trading with people, and other people weren't doing that. So it shows you that sometimes you have to take a risk and you have to go out and mingle amongst other people to move forward in life. And I think that, it's kind of a good, clear example of that.
In regards to masculinity, I ended that point with talking about bravery, courage, and loyalty. Those things transcend. And even when you look at, battles with Julius Caesar, if he fought a worthy opponent, they would give them a proper burial. And that's that people, the loyalty to your people and the bravery and the courage to face death, face the opponent. This is something that transcends men across cultures, religions, and languages. And when you see that, there's something, I mean, obviously as a Christian Orthodox, I believe it's an uncreated energy of God, but there's something that transcends. People can recognize it when they see it. And I think that's, again, the utilization of Ahmad Ibn Fadlan is highlighting that a man entering into this perceived savage culture also recognizes the immense courage, bravery, and loyalty of these people, which allow them to persevere and even win in the face of adversaries that seem insurmountable.
Yeah, there's also a weird thing that all of this brings up that we lack. Not people like us watching now, but people in general, in terms of Western society, that we have this huge lack of this right now, which is the fact that I'm reading a book on Cicero right now, and it talks about how in Cicero's day, when you had Cicero, Pompey, Julius Caesar, all these great Roman figures, but the foundation of their society was based on the family unit, on what it meant to be a citizen of Rome. And that when that was broken, that's when their society started to fall, because everything they did was to further the family, and then the family branches out into society. Now, of course, in a Christian society, everything's based on, everything is based on God and what God gives you. And then you have the family as a sort of mirror of that, and that goes out into society. But now we live in this totally, what's the word for that? Heterogeneous. I don't know the word I'm using it. Heterogeneous society where there's no respect for there is some respect, but there's no respect in general for like-minded groups of people getting together, but also the trade-off with working amongst other people, but also bringing it back to your own family and your own group, your own friend, your own group of friends. We sort of throw virtue out the window for what it means to like other people on a superficial level, but there's no grounding. And this is a good example. Beowulf is a great example of how, even though the Geats and the Danes don't get it, they're not the same group, they respect the fact that everybody does things for their family, for for furtherance of whatever their sort of micro civilization is at the time.
Great point.
Caravaggio says globalism is the worst. Yes, it is, and I'm mad.
Well, they're the fireworm people now. I mean, they are the
That's right. They literally are. They literally are. Yes.
And then number 3 symbols themes and symbols of the 13th Warrior. I'll just hit the last two real quick, and then we'll get into the movie. Feel free to share your thoughts. The Wendell, again, the fireworm people in the film are more than just physical threats. They symbolize the fears of the unknown and the chaos that threatens civilization. Their depiction as a primitive, almost supernatural force aligns with the ways in Beowulf's and represents the externalization of societal fears and darker aspects of human nature. And then, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that one thing that happens in the film is sort of a postmodern thing again, where they make the Northmen think that they are a spiritual entity, but it turns out they're just people.
Mhm.
And that's a lesson to be learned, that, you know, that the bad guys, although they may be pyramid people and, you know, worship the fallen, as AJ says, the fallen one, fallen one, Satan. although they might do that, they are still people. But what it takes away from is that in Beowulf, they literally are fighting supernatural beings, which is probably stronger for the archetypal sense, because we're fighting a spiritual war.
Right. Yeah. And then my last point, Cardi already hit it, fate and mortality. Like Beowulf, the 13th Warrior contemplates fate and the inevitability of death. Beowulf, the Beowulf archetype, accepts his impending death, and his determination to face it with honor mirrors the fatalistic worldview of the original epic, where heroes are more often resigned to their fates, but strive to meet them with dignity, honor, and courage.
Right. Yeah, that's another one of the, that's again where scholars look at Anglo-Saxon poems and they see a delineation between what they suppose is two different writers, because part of the text will deal with will center on fate and destiny, and then it will be followed up by a stanza on Christianity and the importance of free will. But I see these two things as meeting somewhere in the minds of people who either don't understand or continue to not understand them. But I think that the two sort of oppose each other. We can talk about fate and destiny in some sort of colloquial sense, but we each have free will. But in terms of where these two things ram up against each other, you know, the paganism and fatalism and the free will of the Christians, they kind of butt heads within the text. But I think this is probably a singular speaker whose worldview is kind of forming at the time.
Right. Good point. So here is the film. I got it pulled up, and we're going to begin to click through it here. Anything you want to say before we begin introducing the film?
No, I think this is, it's directed by John McTiernan. I think the cinematographer, again, is Jan de Bont, who is also a great director. If you want to see another example of this, you should watch my analysis that I did with Mark Hackard on The Hunt for Red October, another movie, for the boys. But this one is great. And it starts off kind of in media res here. The first thing we see is this guy on a sea voyage.
Right. And we see some of the men like laughing and celebrating on a storm-tossed small Viking ship, and then we're introduced to this guy right here who's kind of huddled in a ball, not exactly the fetal position, but cowering down, covering himself, covered in water. You can tell he's not enjoying the experience whatsoever, while some of the other Vikings are kind of laughing and singing and enjoying the entire experience. And then it moves here to Baghdad. So we're kind of introduced to the origins. We don't know the full story, but the origins of Ahmad ibn Fadlan. And we're told that he had an eye for a particular woman, that he saw the most gorgeous woman in the world who he fell in love with. However, she was the wife of the Sultan, which is not ideal. And because of that, the Sultan gave him a position. This is where it is right here. I don't know if you want to say elevated, because the character is certainly not happy about it, but the furthest region of the empire there, which is butts up with the Nords in Scandinavian countries. And so he's out there as a sort of diplomat. What would you call it?
He's an ambassador figure. I think he's ambassador.
Ambassador,
but he's got to go to the land of the Tartars, right? Which to him is terrifying. They actually end up running away from the Tartars right into the arms of the Northmen.
Right into the Northmen.
The Tartars run away. Yeah. So he looks like Prince Ali, fabulous Ali Ababa.
Exactly. And this is what you're talking about. So this little map emerges, and they're talking about the Rus, the Bulgars, the Tatars, and all these different sort of primitive peoples that he's encountering on his trip to the north here. And so now we see that they're being chased by a group of people. We're told this is the Tatars, and so they're on the run. This sort of caravan of Muslims coming from Baghdad, and then Ahmad and one of his friends here, they run up to this river, and then they see the Vikings coming down, yelling some language they're not familiar with. Really have nowhere to go, but they see the Tatars are afraid of the Vikings. So the people who are chasing them then see the Vikings coming down the river, and they turn around and tuck their tail. And the Muslims here are sort of forced to ingratiate themselves with the Northmen.
Yeah, and by the way, that's Omar Sharif right there, who is the kind of mentor to Antonio Banderas. He's a good one to have in this role, Omar Sharif from Dr. Zhivago, but of course also from Lawrence of Arabia. So whenever you're going to have a movie like this, you add Omar Sharif and it adds some provenance to the authenticity of the film. But it must be terrifying, though, to run away from the Tartars and then you go down to the river and then here comes a Northman ship. It's like, dang, you can't get any, you can't go anywhere. I mean, but think how terrifying it would be to come across Attila the Hun, or I got this great book I covered this in my Crusades analysis of Outremer, when in the Crusade, when the Christians and the forces of the inheritors of Saladin were fighting each other in the desert, all of a sudden came what they called the Scourge of God, which was the force of Genghis Khan. And the Mongols came through and just obliterated the entire swarm of both groups of people and then left. They were just gone.
God, that'd be terrifying.
Yes.
Seeing the Mongol hordes, you could just hear them miles away. Yeah. So here we see that his friend, you said Omar,
Omar Sharif,
Omar Sharif, he knows the Nordic language, and so Ahmad's only avenue into understanding what these people are saying in their culture is Omar translating what they're saying, why they do certain things, and so clearly he's the kind of cultural expert. I'd assume he's already been here to know their language, or
I think they're speaking Latin. They're actually, the one guy knows Latin and he knows Latin, so they communicate in a third language. Yeah.
Gotcha. So they're having a conversation. This is where they're speaking in Latin, and then he's telling him, and it's in English, but we're told, you're supposed to believe that he's probably communicating in Arabic. And then this right here, this is Beowulf. This is our Beowulf archetype right here, the sort of ultimate king.
Yeah, you can tell from his lion's mane and his white tunic there at an elevated position at the dais.
Yeah, none of the Norsemen have eyeliner on. Like Antonio Banderas.
That's right. That's right. He came straight from the My Chemical Romance concert.
He looks like it. Oh man. So we're shown this sort of brutal scene right here where there's some type of a negotiation going on here, and this man to the right, he gets up like he's getting ready to stab the king, who then pulls his sword out and cuts his head off right then and there. And what it's doing, it kind of ingratiating us to the brutality and the savagery of these Northmen, who, again, by the end of the film, we're going to sort of elevate them to a higher prestige due to their honor, their bravery, and their loyalty. So we can see the arc of transition here, beginning with how the Norsemen are introduced.
Yeah, somebody said, Caravaggio said Banderas wouldn't get away with this right now. Maybe he would. Maybe Banderas is, maybe he does. I mean, he is Spanish, and the Spanish were taken over by the Moors from 711 to 1492. Maybe he is part of this. Hey, there's shouts out to Jimmy Clary right there. My old homeboy says, my kids and I love the 13th Warrior. Shouts out to you, Jim.
Shout out, James. God bless, brother. God bless you and your family. So we move on here again, sort of repulsed by the savagery. They see this, what they're doing some type of song here, and they lift this woman up. What is this?
This is The funeral pyre,
The
right?
funeral-
So this is, and they make their statement that they will reflect as a book. They're going to reflect this as a bookend at the end of the film, where they say, this is a kind of Nordic mantra that they say, basically, where they say, "Lo the family, lo the husband, lo the father, lo the mother. I stand and I see that my ancestors stretching back to the beginning. I'll join you soon. Prepare a place for me." And this is the funeral of the former king who's dying. And this is not in Beowulf. This is the funeral of the former king. They're going to light a funeral pyre. They say that these are the old ways. It's not going to happen again. And what's implied here, they don't show it, is that the woman they are lifting up is going to sacrifice herself for the king. She's going to be a human sacrifice. She's going to go into Valhalla with the king on the burning vessel.
And you can see Banderas is horrified at what he's watching.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is where Beowulf becomes the new king. So he kind of fills the position of the dead king's role. And let's see here. This is the scene in which he's confused by this boy here.
That's right.
Who's standing on this Viking ship. Banderas walks from his tent. He wakes up and he makes his way over to Omar, where he's inside the Vikings tent. And they're all waking up. Appears to be they're all hungover. They had a heavy night of mead. And he's wondering why this boy is just standing there silently on the ship. And he tells him, well, the Vikings don't know if he's real or not. He could be a sort of spiritual or figment of their imagination type of figure, and that he has to sit there and wait till the Vikings recognize that he is a real person. He's not some type of spirit or ghost. And then he comes to convey the message of the need or the call of another king for these people to come help defend their civilization, their village.
Yeah, this was a take on Beowulf because Beowulf travels to Hrothgar and meets Wulfgar. But what they did here is they made Wulfgar the young son of Hrothgar. So he's sent as an emissary, and he appears kind of like a star child or something, through the mists of time. Like you said, to prove to them that he's real. He is not an ethereal being, which was kind of a mystical element that was added, I guess, later for them to, because the mist and the smoke and the fire is going to be something that conveys the sense of the evil that's impending on.
Like the rise of chaos.
Right.
Yeah. So here the little boy's conveying his message, again, pleading for help that these people are destroying his people's village. This is the fireworm people, and it makes a reference to the dragon. And Omar's trying to understand all this stuff, and he's conveying it to Banderas as the kid's speaking. And then we see the oracle comes in after the request to figure out which 13 warriors are going to be sent in defense. And so she's casting all these lots, and it's all the greatest warriors in the group. And then of course at the end it comes to the Arab man.
Right. Did you ever see the show Vikings?
I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah, with
I never watched the whole series.
Yeah, it's with Ragnar Lothbrok. I mean, it's a great show. It's very, very well done. And that and The Last Kingdom. And I analyzed one of the Icelandic sagas, and what it shows you right there with the casting of the bones is that the bones usually with the Northmen, the bones actually usually have runes written on the bones. And one of the things that happens in the Icelandic sagas is that there's one scene where there's a woman who's sick in bed, and the protagonist goes and finds that there's a whale bone under her bed that's been carved with runes. And so the runes represent, because Odin is kind of a Christian figure in inverse, because he hangs on a tree, but he hangs upside down into the whirlpool on Yggdrasil, and he brings back the alphabet. He's kind of a satanic / inverted Christ / Prometheus figure who brings back knowledge for people to be able to talk. And he gives his left eye for the runes. And so runes to Vikings represent magic, language, and poetry. And so casting the runes on bones is a divination tactic for the seer who's usually blind. There's usually a sort of a Tiresias figure, a blind seer. He or she can't see in front of them, but they can see the future. And so that's
Right.
what we sort
It's
of
like a
have.
heightened spiritual sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this isn't for anybody who's not familiar, like divinization and utilization of like these bones and stuff like this. This is very common in the ancient world. China, for example, various oracles and divinization using turtle shells, stuff like this. So this isn't totally uncommon at all. This is kind of part and parcel of more primitive ancient cultures.
Them damn witches at Burning Man are still doing it.
Yeah, they are. They are. Now they cast horoscopes by throwing their dirty tampons down. They see. Okay, I'll stop.
Susan Sarandon drinking the ashes of her godfather, Timothy Leary, at the Burning Man festival.
Yeah. They look at the blood splatter and what type of messages are being sent from the Earth goddess. Okay, moving through here.
Yeah.
So we see Banderas. This is the point in which he realizes that the oracle has cited that the Arab man has to go. He didn't know what she's saying. He didn't know what's going on. He knows that they're casting lots, and now he finds out that he has to go.
This guy's cool.
There's no saying no, right? So Omar lets him know, like, you've been chosen. You got to go. Yeah. And so they're all mounting horses, getting ready to put them on a boat and start their journey. And so you see how they're ready for battle. They're ready for anything that's getting ready to come. And he's over here in cloths and his Muslim headscarf. And it's like, okay. And you'll see here, his horse is much, much smaller than the other horses. Yeah. So anyways, they're on their way. The Vikings having a merry old time. This is where now we see this transition in the film where Ahmad we see him staring at them having a conversation. They're having fun, making jokes, and it moves from unintelligible language to now, as the movie watcher, it's now in English. And so we're being demonstrated that Ahmad has sort of studied or come to understanding of what the words are being meant. And now he can speak to these people, which they're going to say something, and he's going to respond about his mother, who was a proper woman, and he's going to respond to them in their language. And so we're seen as the movie watcher. Okay, now there's a point of communication and connection here between the outsider and the 12 warriors, the 12 Viking warriors.
Yeah, he also makes friends with them by being one of the fellas. Right. They insult him and he insults them back. And this is something that I know that a lot of people have a very hard time with now, but it's when the guys get together.
Yeah.
The insults fly. Now, of course, what people don't always talk about is that there comes a time when the jokes, when there's a line with the jokes and then you're being walked on, you have to defend yourself. But as far as, some things can go too far, but here, this is an entryway into them. They're all sitting around a campfire. They're all talking and they make a mom joke, right? And he gives it back to him. The other thing I noticed in the scene is that John McTiernan just used this in Hunt for Red October. There's a scene in Hunt for Red October where we see Sean Connery talking to Putin, who is the KGB officer on board the submarine. And we're looking at them and the camera goes into the drink and then pulls away. And then now we're in English. We go from Russian into English, right. And it's a really good transition. And here we get that, that Antonio Banderas' character has used the language that he gained as a cipher from listening to them in Latin, and then in translation earlier to using keywords as sort of cornerstones to understanding the linguistic phrases and practices that they're doing here, and then just simply by listening, and then all of a sudden we pull away and now he understands their language. It's a really good transition in a movie that's not often done.
Right. Well, and you're making a good point too about the subtleties of what's even being said once he's able to communicate with them, which is he's coming back at him for making a joke about his mother, which they thought he wouldn't understand, and now he's understanding and he's responding to them in their language. Yeah. And like you said, when guys get together, like insulting each other and coming up with a clever response, a quick quip, like this is what men do, and it's really a sign of affection, because when you first meet somebody, you don't do that, or if you're new to a group of guys, you don't do that.
Right.
But once you have a familiarity, once you're able to sort of mock and tease each other, like that's actually how you build friendships as
It
guys.
is. It is. And the only thing I'll say about, because there's a lot of people who talk about, in this area, especially on the internet, about young people, young dudes who have such a hard time with talking to ladies. And my thought, I don't really comment on this, but my thought with this has always been that the best way, it's a time tested way to do this, is to have friends first.
Yeah.
Once you have a group of friends, you talk to the fellas and you can tell a story and you can make people laugh. The rest sort of comes to you, but you have to be able to get along with the guys, because the guys also provide a kind of the reinforcement for the things you're doing. If for instance, if you go out somewhere or whatever, you make and they say, hey, you look like, then I just added it myself. Then maybe you should listen. And here, what happens is he insults the guy's mother. The guy stands up like he's going to fight, and then the other guy gets in the way and says, "No, it's all right. It's all right. It's funny. It's okay.
Right.
Now he's one of us."
Right.
Right. So
yeah, he actually made some people laugh. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is a major transition in the film. We're 16 minutes in. It's only an hour, 42-minute film, and now Banderas Ahmad, he is part of the group. He speaks their language. He's joked with them. They are now welcomed him as part of them, but he hasn't proven himself in battle. And there's going to be the next way in which he's going to have to ingratiate himself is, as you pointed out, he can hardly handle the Viking sword because it's so big and heavy and kind of humiliating. And he's humiliated by it. So then he'll make an Arab sword that's much smaller.
Yeah.
So anyways, so now he's able to speak their language and let's see here. This is where the king right here. So very dark, Beowulf. He asks him, how or can you use symbols, use script to convey meaning and words? And so what he does is he writes out a sort of Muslim inscription in Arabic about how what is it? It's that there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he does it one time. He watches it, sort of gives approval, and then he kind of walks away. This is where he's writing it all in Arabic.
That's always the depiction used instead of the picture of Muhammad. It's always the inscription.
Right. So next day, they're getting back on their horses to travel further. And this is when he kind of, another way, ingratiates himself. He takes his smaller horse, which they're kind of mocking, and he begins jumping over stuff and demonstrating how agile it is and how he was able to go from the front of the pack, or from the back of the pack to the front of the pack here very quickly by taking another maneuver here. And so they kind of recognize, okay, so he's got some skills, even though, again, he's riding a much smaller horse. And you can see, like, looking here, how much further down his head is versus some of the other men, even the men behind him.
It's a very Lord of the Rings thing going on here. I mean, he's kind of a hobbit, in terms of the Fellowship of the Ring. I mean, he's the small character here,
Right.
going out on this quest. And of course, then he ends up back on a ship, seasick.
Right. I took it as this is the original scene. So now we have an understanding of the opening scene and why he's on a boat, cowered down, while these Viking guys are singing. Is they're literally sailing when it's snowing. It's literally cold, like ice outside. These guys aren't bothered by it, and he's cowered down, wet, cold, just waiting to get off this boat.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. There's some contrast here, or actually, there's a comparison here between the 2007 Robert Zemeckis film Beowulf, which is worth watching. It's especially worth watching because
there were some haters in the chat. They said it was cringe.
Well, there's some cringe parts to it, and it's a kind of a love and hate it thing. So the good things about it are that the music, the music is often used as the introduction to AJ's show, and that the main character, who's played by Ray Winstone, is pretty cool. When they're on the ship, it's pretty cool because but the cringe thing is that he says what what's his face says in the 300 movie like 7 times in the movie. I am Beowulf. Like he yells it 7 times. I am Beowulf in the film, which is a little bit much. And also it's a anamorphic sort of movie where it looks like a Final Fantasy game, and it's sort of weird to determine which is which. And also the worst part about that movie is that they do away with Beowulf from the original text, and they make it a Hollywood version where he is seduced by the Angelina Jolie Grendel's mother character, and then the dragon is his son, which is stupid. That's a Hollywood postmodern version of Beowulf that has nothing to do with the original text. So that definitely sucks, but it's worth watching. I mean, it is what it is, as the boomers say.
Right. So we see now it's the Vikings emerging from the mist, emerging
with the dragon.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Led by the dragon on their ship here. Again, frosty beards, treacherous elements that they're traveling through, but they're beginning to arrive at their destination, and they're not sure what's before them. So they start shooting arrows, flaming arrows, and kind of sounding the alarm if they're getting ready to go to battle, just in case, because they don't know who's on the other side of this mist.
There was let me tell a brief anecdote here.
Sure.
The thing about enjoying the cold and the frost and the mist and the rain. My own version of this is when I was in 5th grade, I was on a scout hike. It was December 7th, 1991. I was on a scout hike to this place called Elliot's Knob. It was a 5-mile scout hike straight up. It was extremely hard. I was in 5th grade. And as we were going up, it started raining. And there was a guy who was 3 grades older than me who had put a tarp up and was under the tarp crying. And he was literally saying, "Mommy, mommy, I want to go home." and I walked past him, and it was at that point in my life that I realized that first of all, that it's just rain. It's just snow. And that if you are a person who, here's my inspiration to people. If you are a person who enjoys the bad weather and the bad elements and they don't affect you, if you don't feel cold, if you don't feel too hot, if you can get along in those things, it makes you a pretty unique person, and it makes you enjoy life a lot more. Like when I lived in Northern Ireland, I never saw a single person with an umbrella. There were old ladies in the street, and it was raining every single day, and they were just getting soaking wet, in their wigs. And I never saw anybody complain. I'm like, if an old lady isn't complaining about it raining every day, then who cares? So the Vikings have that in a much more extreme. I'm not a Viking, but
right.
Well, maybe I am.
Maybe you are.
But they are willing to put themselves at risk because the weather should be seen as a kind of blessing for them, no matter what it is. Maybe you can take advantage of it.
Right. And this is when the Vikings emerge through the mist, and they see the beginnings of the village up at the top of the mountain there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they realize that they're safe. There's no threats around them. And then this guy comes out to ask them who they are and what they're doing. And they just tell him that we need to speak with the king. And they are escorted up here to the village.
That's the mead hall. That's the mead hall Herod, which is the center of their civilization right here.
And here's the king. Obviously, that's Beowulf, and then here's the king. And basically, he's informing. Go ahead.
Well, this guy's name is Hrothgar, the king of the Geats in the text, and they say, "Here comes." It's interesting because he kind of appears like when Worm Tongue or whatever in Lord of the Rings is talking to the king who's under a spell. This guy's in a way under a spell. In the film Beowulf, Anthony Hopkins plays Hrothgar, and he can't be harmed because he's the king, but also because he's the father of the dragon. But in Beowulf, Hrothgar cannot be harmed because his throne is given to him by God. He represents it's kind of the divine right of kings.
Authority.
So he has a kind of halo about him where he can't be harmed, but his people are being harmed. And he says here, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a prodigal son here. He says, I recognize this boy. He was the son of my friend when I was younger, and now he's back. And when you look at Hrothgar, his depiction here, it's interesting because he's kind of decked out in a centurion's outfit, like a Roman armor outfit here with a mixture of Germanic and Roman armor.
Right.
And that's interesting for the times because they sort of collect the armor that they take from their enemies. And of course, he has the best armor.
Right. So he is presenting himself and the other 12 men as defenders of the threats that this village is facing. And here we see where they move out of the main hall there, and they see this child walking in the distance. Ahmad's the first one to spot them or spot him, and then ask them, like, who is that? And then all the Vikings start rushing towards the child, and you see the child is covered in blood, and it's totally just distraught and confused, and most likely came from a place in which his entire village was destroyed and saw terrible horrors. And this woman comes and picks them up and takes him back to the village for safety. But we're kind of introduced to the chaos that this village is experiencing based on the fireworm people.
This is the exact same thing that happens in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. They took these stones from here, right? And it's the children who've been taken. Also, that actress is Diane Venora. You guys will remember her from the Michael Mann film Heat, when she said, when Al Pacino says, "So my post dead tech bullshit house. So what if the chicken got overcooked?" I watched her in a movie last night randomly. This movie called The Substitute with Tom Berenger, where he plays an ex-Navy SEAL who becomes a substitute teacher at a high school in Miami in the early 90s, which was very funny. But anyway.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, great film, great flick.
Here we're seeing the village that the little boy has come from that's been ransacked. Tons of people are dead. Nobody's survived. And they're kind of witnessing the chaos that these people are bringing forth on the Norsemen.
Jordan brought up a good point in my chat. He said, this is from the 2007 movie. So one of the best / worst lines. "The sea is my mother. She'll never take me back to a murky womb." That is, by the way, a spot on Ray Winstone impression. "She'll never take me back to a murky womb." Yeah.
So we're kind of, again, we're seeing the blood, the guts, the horror. Oh, and then there we go. If I could stop it, that little black thing in their hand, that's the goddess that these people worship. He finds it on the ground. He sees the bear claw. And again, these people are presented as supernatural, like half human, half bear. The fact that they're seeing bear claws on the ground, for them, it's suggesting that maybe these people are like hybrids. Maybe these are some type of mythical creatures. We'll find out, obviously, that they're all men and they're dressed up as bears. But this is leading to the suspense of the film of who is this enemy and what are they doing? And during this point, we're also told that these are cannibals, that they devour the dead, perform all these different horrors. Okay, let's see. What scene is this? This is Beowulf coming back, telling the king what they saw. And he's telling them, "Oh no," there's the little goddess figure. He says, "Oh no, the mist is coming." And we're getting ready to be introduced to the fireworm people. First, you want to speak on this guy right here?
Well, this right here is not Wolfgar. He is
it's kind of like, I forget, the head warrior of the village. He's the son of
Hrothgar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what happens in Beowulf is that he's the guy who Shakespeare took this for Caesar when Cassius is trying to convince Brutus about why they should eliminate Caesar, because he says that one time there was a swimming competition and they swam out into the lusty Tiber with hearts of controversy swimming, and Caesar had a seizure, and Cassius has to save him. Well, the same thing happens at Beowulf. There was a swimming competition, and he's saying, you say you're a great warrior and you're come to be great, but I remember a story about you where you were swimming with a guy and that you drowned. And Beowulf says, yeah. And in this version, he says, yeah, well, I heard about you and your, I heard about you and your mom, or something, something. But he represents the kind of sinister aspect within the kingdom. That's, he's only vying for power. He is selfish.
He's the opposite of loyalty, courage, and bravery, right? He's only self-interested. He comes from a privileged position. He hasn't proven himself, all this stuff.
Yes, Beowulf is a fighter of the heart, the mind, and the body, and this guy is completely selfish. Beowulf is a selfless hero. You know what I just realized about this movie? I bet you anything that John McTiernan, when he was discussing the art direction of the movie, said, we need to go with the kind of Vietnam thing here. The bad guys represent the Viet Cong hiding underground, right, in their tunnels, and they only come out and fight guerrilla war at night. And these guys represent the Western forces of colonialism going into the place and trying to take it over. But we're going to have a battle of sort of hearts and minds battle. I bet you anything he thought of that because that is sort of what happens here.
Right. Yeah, I didn't connect it with the Vietnam. I just took it as the sort of subterranean underworld type of archetype in regards to it. But I could see your point. I'd be
at Heel 364 at Lon Dock. No.
So this scene we're introduced to the king's son, kind of a conceited, arrogant little figure, challenging the man of actual courage and bravery. This guy is talking about the fireworm people, or what he refers to as the dragon or the dragon people, and kind of building up the legend and the suspense here.
Yeah. That guy is supposed to be sort of an Odin figure there with his left eye missing, sort of a half-blind seer. And by the way, I think Beowulf was shouting out Odin when they were getting to the place, because they were in the mist and he was shouting out Odin, and then they sent fiery arrows before they landed so they could see they were in the right place here, which is interesting because Beowulf is not that. Beowulf is in a paganistic, again, a crossroads between paganism and Christianity, but there's a clear Christian language within the poem. And this one, they just made Beowulf all pagan.
Right. Here, the enemies are about to approach, and the warriors are hiding, and they're trying to make no noise. And this is where Antonio Banderas basically says, I'm not a warrior. And his Viking compatriot here says, you're about to be.
Yeah.
You really don't have an option here, bud. And
so this is essentially in the poem, the first attack of Grendel in the mead hall. He attacks at night, and we're going to get in the poem. This would be Beowulf fighting without his sword. He fights hand to hand against Grendel and rips his arm off and places his arm over the rafters as a trophy.
Right. And this is where Antonio Banderas gets hit by one of the bear claws and gets these cuts on his face that you mentioned earlier. That's going to play in the next scene where the woman offers him urine to cleanse it.
He draws first blood. He's blooded in to his gang here.
Right. And this is another scene in which ingratiates him with the Northmen here, the Vikings, is that he did take first blood. He took a full, I guess, paw, or what do you want to call it? A punch, a slicing from the enemy here, and didn't die, withstood it. And it was kind of his first introduction to battle, right? He didn't really kill anybody. He didn't really do much. He took a blow and kind of sat down and hid until the other guys killed everybody. But that's kind of the result here.
Yeah, instead of guerrilla tactics, they're using bear tactics, huh?
Hey.
Hey.
There you go.
Okay.
So this is the woman that sees his face. She's trying to help him cleanse the wound.
He's like, dang, she kind of fine.
She fine, bro.
Yeah.
She real fine. And so the next day, this is where I believe, now he's trying to, so he had his first introduction to battle, right? He's part of the guys. And so now he's trying to take one of the the Viking swords and practice with it, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
And this
There's
huge
Ajax.
hunk of a man,
Yeah.
this is like the biggest Viking. He's ginormous.
That's
He's
Thor,
seeing him
Svensson,
and kind of rolling his
Ajax.
eyes. Go
Yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry.
Thor, Svensson, Ajax, or whatever his name is sledgehammering the defensive lines on the outside of the thing. And here he goes. He makes a scimitar.
Yep.
And now he has his own sword.
Yeah, this is where, so he's kind of embarrassed. He puts down the other sword and he asks, "Where is the blacksmith?" And they pointed to him. He walks up there and then he comes back with the scimitar here.
Yeah.
And then he tries to perform the same practice and drills, and now he's successful. And, the Vikings kind of think that he's got a girl sword, but
yeah,
they say, okay. This is where she asked him if he would like any water. And this is the scene in which you were talking about.
Look, Vietnam again. They're putting punji sticks at the bottom of this moat right here.
Interesting.
Again.
Maybe you're onto something here. I did not connect that at all. That did not come to my mind when watching the film, but maybe you're onto something. So anyway, she tells him what needs to be done to cleanse his wounds to make sure they're not going to be filled with pus the next day. And he's kind of liking the blonde-haired or light red-haired, blue-eyed woman. And we'll see here soon that they kind of have a little night together. So the men are aware that the enemies are coming and they have no defense. And so what this whole scene, there's little things, minor plots happening in the scene, but they're building a defense for these people who are going to be riding up on horseback. Again, they believe are some type of supernatural bear spirit. And the village, one of the reasons why it's so vulnerable to all these attacks is it has no defense, and they really don't have enough men or manpower to really build something substantial. So they're trying to do the best they can with the time they have.
They also notice while they're digging in the mud here that there's a kind of side plot happening, but that's run by Hrothgar's son, where this guy
right here in the red.
Yeah, and so Beowulf himself says that he's going to take care of this guy so that he can achieve supremacy in terms of running he can't be vying for power with this other guy. And the other guy, he suspects the other guy's going to have him cut down. So then his side man here says, "You shouldn't be fighting. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." Yeah, that's a good best friend to have there. And so now they're going to fight. This guy's a huge fella. And he doesn't, and this guy don't want to fight at first. He's like, "I did not insult you," And the other guy, they get in this fight, and he basically he tricks him, right? He hustles him like in a game of pool here. He's pretending to be the weak character, and eventually he's going to lop this guy's head off. And this is where Jim pointed out over my chat that what is it? Strength perceived. What is it?
Who? I'll try to find the comment. Who is it?
It's James Clary right there. Jim pointed out. What did he say? What is it? Victor, strength. I forget the quote in the movie. Strength perceived is.
Oh, power perceived is power achieved.
That's it. And that's what Beowulf makes clear. And this is a tactic that Antonio Banderas' character brings out or learns from this, that once the other guy takes care of it, that now he's achieved power. Now he had to physically dominate the guy. And Beowulf even makes a comment about that. He says he would have been valuable for us tonight. So it's a loss.
We miss his soul, I think, is the last thing he says about him.
Yeah.
And so this guy, like you said, is much bigger. And the smaller friend of Beowulf here, he's deliberately shoveling mud onto him. So he's trying to help out here to build some type of fortification against the enemy. And he keeps throwing mud on him. And he's like, "Hey, don't you know how to shovel? Like, what's your problem?" And he's clearly instigating a physical conflict here to make a point. And what we're going to see is the point being made is he's going to allow this guy to use his power, his physical strength, to smash 3 different shields, Viking shields, to demonstrate like this guy's getting ready to kill him, right? And as the son of the king, and as I skip forward here, this will all make sense. So they're having a direct conflict. You can see how much smaller he is, right?
Yeah.
And so he challenges him to battle. And this guy thinks, "Are you an idiot?" Like, I think he makes a comment about how old and small he is.
Yeah.
And So now we see that they're getting ready to battle it. And Ahmad here, he's terrified. He's like, this is a dumb decision. You're getting ready to die. This guy's bigger than you. What are you doing? And he's like, basically, just trust me. Like, don't worry about it. And we see that this battle's getting ready to begin. And from all perceived perspectives here, this guy is dominating him, and he's on his heels. He's getting ready to be killed. And we'll see the again, he goes up to Beowulf, tells him he needs to stop it, and he says he's getting ready to die. He goes, maybe he will.
Yeah.
And that or maybe he won't. And so then he gets the nod from the son of the king to kill him.
Yeah.
And that's when the Viking actually begins to fight, realizing that this whole thing was a setup, and cuts the guy's head off.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's defeated. Looks like he's a little bit bloodied. He's out of energy. He's out of strength. Look at him. And this is when this scene right here is where he's basically given the go ahead to kill him.
Yeah.
And I think I just went by it. So here, see if I can just play just a second. There's the nod.
Yeah, watch the score in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's it?
Can't play much.
Pictures will not be happy.
We've done that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But here, we're not going to be able to catch the actual slicing
That's
of his
okay.
head. But anyways, you guys get it. The guy, the big dude, goes to kill him. He jumps out of the way. The guy's off balance. He slices his head off right then and there. Everybody in the village is watching. And the son of the king is embarrassed.
It also lets
there's his head.
It also lets them see that Antonio Banderas has proven that he will jump into the fight to save his friend, his new friend here, which he already did that in the first battle. But here, I mean, he really is about to jump in and try to save him. And Beowulf, puts his arm,
let it happen. We got all this under control.
Yeah.
And so this is another sort of pivotal point in the movie here in regards to the respect garnered by the 13 warriors.
Yeah.
And so now Ahmad's getting ready to put it together. He's realized, oh, okay, you guys had this intention from the get-go. And now they're on watch. They're looking for the fireworm people. And here we're getting ready to start to see some smoke. And there it is. There's the mist is coming. They tell him, the mist is coming in. He slides down from the tree, sort of bangs on this massive gong-like symbol, and alerts the whole village that they're on their way. So now they're trying to fortify and shut everything before they get here.
Yeah, light the fires! Light the fires! Bang the gong.
Yeah,
everybody get
but
inside.
Right here, a small little girl was left out of the village. So she is out where that little boy was. And Ahmad sees this, and he takes his agile, smaller, perceived feminine horse and runs out and rescues her and picks her up before the people come.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a dramatic scene right here where the suspense is building. The people are getting ready to approach the village. They're on their way. He's got to take his horse. And here we see the fireworm people gathering. And here they are. They're outside. They're ready for battle. And a few of the warriors are going to die in this scene. This is not the climactic battle that happens at the end of the film. We're about a little past halfway here. This is a battle in which Ahmad is the only one who at first he's the first one to realize he sees a dead body and realizes that it's just a man, dressed up as a bear. And so he's got his new sword. He's got his confidence. He's ready to fight. I mean, feel free to add any commentary here.
That guy had a full-on gladiator helmet on. And yeah, they so they're fighting sort of Grendel here, and then later on when they get to the witch in the bear cave, that's going to be Grendel's
mother, yeah.
represent Grendel's mother. But they see the dragon coming toward this sort of dragon form coming towards them, and they, when they should realize when they see them up on on horseback with torches that would be the case. But like you said, he says there, it's just like Predator. It's John McTiernan again with Predator. If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Right. And they put up a pretty good stalworthy defense here, and eventually the firework people retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're able to see a few of the dead bodies. Unfortunately, some of their fellow men die in this battle, but now the fireworm people are on the run. They're retreating back to their cave, and we see the girl that helped him come back, and they're going to have a little night together. And this right here, he asked him about his little girlfriend and how was it last night, and he tells him a gentleman never tells.
Yeah, no, this is a kind of, as Jordan points out, a kind of side war here. I mean, because this is the thing that would have demoralized them before Beowulf and his band got there. It doesn't demoralize them at all because they're totally in battle mode. There's the dragon on the wall,
and then they bring in a dead body, and now they're showing everybody who these people really are. They're men painted in black with red paint, dressed as a bear. So they have actual bear skulls, bear skins, all types of stuff
covered in soot here. And also they're made to be in this a sort of Cro-Magnon or something. That these are Cro-Magnon people left over from the biological swamp or whatever it is, living underground.
Yeah, sort of primordial chaos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, what's happening here? This is when they go to meet the old woman, the oracle.
Yeah.
So now they go and they meet with the village's oracle. This is a different oracle than the woman who casted the lot for the 13 warriors. And she's looking at the goddess figure. So Beowulf has handed this thing to her, and she's looking at it. And now she's telling them what they need to do.
Yeah.
And basically, how do you hunt a bear? Well, you go into the bear's den. And she tells him, you need to kill the witch, the head priestess type figure, and you have to kill the chief. And if you do that, you'll basically metaphorically cut the head off the snake.
Yeah. Which is interesting because she's a snake woman. She's a serpentine Lilith snake woman with a gorgon head and snakes wrapped around her neck,
right?
With a little bear talon down there, sticking her nasty knobbly finger down there in the snake blood. That's how she's going to poison a Beowulf, which is, by the way, does reflect the Beowulf poem because he gets cut with the poison of the dragon, and that's what ends up killing him after he kills the beast.
Right. And in this scene, it kind of reflects again back to the earlier one where the 13 warriors are leaving their village. The wives are kissing them, wishing them well on their journey, knowing that they may die wherever they're going. And here, his new little girlfriend or fling that he has here, she sees that they're riding out and they're aware that they're going to find the lair, the cave of where all these people actually live that nobody has ever seen and nobody's ever gone to.
Yeah.
And no words are spoken. They kind of make eye contact, and she touches his leg and horse, and he's kind of taking all this in. And they're kind of on this journey to find where the fireworm people are at.
Yeah, the counter-terrorist Phoenix program tactics, the best defense is an offense. Go and demoralize them inside of the clan of the cave bear, go underground become tunnel rats and go into the thing here. Yeah.
Right. And so they couldn't find the cave, but they found this bridge, and they realized that this bridge is leading them into the cave, which is actually under them. It's going directly into the mountain. So they live in the mountain, and they decide, oh, well, looks like we're going to bust in there. So they jump down, kill a couple guys that are standing outside, try to make as little noise as possible, and they start making their way into the cave.
Now, what I noticed about this whole sequence through to the end when they come out the other side is that it's Dantean. The same thing happened in the movie Manhunter, where Will Graham is running from the cell of Hannibal Lecter, running downwards in the jail. You would think that his jail cell would be in the bowels of the cell, but actually he ends up running downwards, because in this, when they go into the cave, they have to escape by going down, which is Dante. And you have to, in the
Right.
Inferno, Dante and Virgil have to go down the 9 circles to the very bottom in order to escape back up into the outer world. They can't climb
Right.
back out the top.
And it's a kind of a baptismal metaphor too, because they
Mhm.
have to hold their breath and they have to swim under the end of the cave and emerge on the other side, which is, freedom. The new realization of who these people are, defeating the witch, this whole thing. So it's kind of a pivotal point also in the understanding of who the enemy is.
Yeah, in the text, when Beowulf goes into the mire, it's a stinking, hellish, fiery mire that he has to swim down into, and he's left alone. His other soldiers won't go down there with him, and only one is left to stick by his side. The others depart, and then they all get chewed out later. But when he swims into the water, he swims down and he's attacked by various monsters before he gets there. He has his sword. His sword is melted by the breath of Grendel's mother before he gets to her, before he comes back out the other side. But in this one, we have a group of people who are going down and attacked by all these, skull people.
Right. And so here we see a massive pile of human bones, skulls all over the place.
Kind of, as they call it in Rome, in Nero's crypto portico, which is his mountain of death that resided right near the Domus Aurea, where Nero built his golden house. And in this one, again, we have columns of skulls and bodies, because these people live on death.
Right. And so to get to the bottom layer where they believe the temple, the site of worship, again, they're looking for the witch here. That's the whole goal, is they need to go down further. And so they're trying to take this rope, swing to the other side of this waterfall, and then climb down into the water. They almost get caught. That's one of the suspenses of this scene. Luckily, they don't. And
here's what people are waiting for. They have to cross the abyss.
Yes.
They have to cross the abyss in order to
and descend, cross the abyss and descend into chaos, into the unknown waters. And so then they make their way. They see a few people over here. They sneak up on them. They're having some type of ritual gathering.
The Ewoks. They find the Ewoks in the cave.
Yeah, and you can see the Vikings from behind, and they just slaughter all these people. And you can see here's Beowulf gives a nod. Yes.
Yeah.
It's time. I'll see if I can capture that. That's all you get. That's all you get. YouTube won't let me. And so they defeat all these people, and they see that I think one of them is able to run away and make aware to the rest of the group. And so they tell Beowulf, go in there. That must be the temple. She must be in there. And so he's walking into this place. There she is. Again, she has a snake wrapped around her. Again, as BLA said, does she look like she's gone to Burning Man? I'd say so. And so she makes eye contact with him, and she has like one little guy there with her. She has some type of poison blood.
Ayahuasca. And she's cooking a mean batch of ayahuasca DMT down there for the Matrix Revolutions rave in the cave.
So you can see that Beowulf's sword here is bloody. He's already killed the guy pretty easily. Not very difficult. The guy that first stood up. So now he's got the witch, just her in the cave in front of the big fat booby goddess figure.
Yeah.
And she dodges a few times, and then she's able to stab him in the arm, and he cuts her head off. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch that. Probably not. There you can at least see the blood from her head on the dude's body. And he's grabbing his arm. That's where she stabbed him with like a bear talon that was dipped in whatever that blood potion was. Yeah. And so he comes back and lets them know that he's killed her. And they're like, okay, well, we got to find a way out of here now. Everybody's coming after us. And so they decide to go deeper into the cave. And it goes on. This guy, he ends up stopping. He's kind of worn out. He's one of the older guys in the group. And Ahmad,
He's got a great line.
No, we got to go. And he's telling him, no, you go. I'm decided I'm going to die here. And I'm going
he says,
to fight him to the death while they chase you.
And he also says, today was a great day. A great day. That's a great line.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's a great line, dude. He's going to be the sentinel here, the bulwark against the oncoming hordes of Ewoks, trying to get them coming down the mountain.
So continuing further here, eventually they're going to get to a point where there's just water. Here they are, nowhere to go. It's a dead end. The whole group of the fireworm people are on their way, and they don't really know what to do. First, they think they're going to stand battle. This is going to be their death. But then they start hearing waves crashing, and they come up with the idea that I wonder if that water underneath it, there must be a way to the ocean. And so they decide, might as well try. We don't have anything to lose. So they all go underwater here, and it's hard to see.
Make their way out the bottom of the ninth circle.
There we go. Yeah. And then there's one light, and they make their way to the light, which is an opening in the water. And they make their way out. Now they're back at the village, telling everybody what they've done, what they've seen.
They smelled the salt air of the sea, which of course is their home. The sea is my home. It's a murky womb. And so they make their way out to the sea and make their way out. But he's poisoned. I've been trying to think this whole time of a pun for the statue of the lady. All I got is if she's Artemis, she's Armpitimus. That's all I got so far.
I'm sure she doesn't shave. So here, Beowulf, he is becoming ill. They know that he's going to die. Whatever that witch had on that talon is clearly killing him. But they also know that these people are going to come for revenge here.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of just discussing the fate of him and what they're going to do. They make their way outside, and they see that the mist is coming again. So the people are going to be on their way. And they're trying to, again, build a little bit of a fortification. They see, okay, this is way more than the last time. This is the whole group of people. You can see thousands of them outside surrounding the village. And this is a scene where Ahmad takes his boots off, takes all his warrior gear off, and he prostrates to Allah and does an Islamic prayer before battle.
Yeah, he sort of tries to evangelize them throughout, but not really. I mean, he just uses language as a code for how he can speak to them. He's not really trying to evangelize them. But yeah, here he prostrates in prayer, and here we have essentially the dragon in bear form.
Yeah, this is
from Beowulf.
This is the king. So the witch has been killed. They have to kill this guy to end this battle with these people,
right?
And so it starts to rain, and they take that as divine favor, because if it's raining, that means these people, the fireworm people, can't set their village on fire,
right?
So they're ready for battle.
They also should get that soot washed off of them so they can see that there are people. They know they're people at this point, but they get a little bath here.
And now the war commences. Fireworm people are on their way, smashing through the barriers. Tons of people. And here we see Beowulf makes his way out. He's stumbling, bumbling, barely able to hold his sword. And yet, once he sees the enemy, he's able to muster the strength. And here he actually defeats the king. So he slashes the king's horse, I believe. There he is on the ground. And we
hear a hellish war cry. Death sound has come out of the sky. We know that they've been defeated, and they all call themselves away. There he is, standing up there on the bulwarks.
This is
with
right
his
before
sword
he
in
dies.
his hand. Yeah, and of course he's a Viking, so he dies with his sword in his hand, covered in blood, looking down with
his eyes
spine.
open, facing the enemy.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, this is a pretty badass scene, and it is an epic ending of the film. And so our Beowulf figure here kills the king. They're on the retreat. They've achieved the goal. You can see them running away. Ahmad has found his courage. He killed multiple people, and even while they're retreating, he's still going after them. He runs after them. You'll see here. And they just start disappearing.
Yeah, they disappear
And
into the
here,
mist. And there he is sitting up facing the enemy with his
that's
solemn
right
face, right, with his sword right by his side. That's crazy. That's a great image. Like he's on the throne.
That is, and that's essentially the ending of the movie. We got one more scene here, basically saying goodbye. But that's what makes this film interesting in relation to Beowulf, is that it's through the eyes of Ahmad, but it's still the main, in a sense, the main protagonist is still Beowulf.
Yes, he is, and that's great because it shows also the virtue of service. This guy doesn't have any, he doesn't have anything to do with these people, but he goes there to serve them, and he's one of this band. And Beowulf, the epic hero, he also has nothing to do with these people. He's just called on a quest, and he serves, and he gives his life for his people, for his friends, and for this group of people, and he'll live on. And what I really like about the last scene is that when Banderas gets on the boat to leave and his best friend is waving him goodbye, it shows that, the typical thing in Hollywood is, of course, like you said, the fairy tale ending where the guy survives, where the hero survives, but that's a fairy tale, right? This is an epic battle. It's an epic poem. It becomes a pretty good film, but that's not why it's great. It's translatable into so much of English literature and into what we understand of archetypes, and that the speaker through whose eyes and through whose words we see the rest of the story leaves. He doesn't stay and go, oh no, these are my people now. He leaves like he should. He's gone on his quest. He's served with his people, and he leaves it all, and he goes on to live life, which is important. I think not that we get moral lessons from movies, but it's important to understand what it's saying morally, which is that it's important that you go through your struggles, you go through your quests, your side quests, and that you go on to live life. And a lot of times that's painful. You have to leave your family and friends, you leave your friends, and then you go back to where you belonged, and then you spread whatever it was.
Right. Here, and that the rest of the scene is basically what you said. They burn Beowulf. They give him a proper Viking send off, if you will. He sees all this. You can see that it's impacting him, and then this is the ending. This is exactly what you said, where he calls him his son. This is the Viking that killed the friend of the other king's son. Sorry, I kind of convoluted way to explain it, but and they become very close. And so now he tells him to pray for him, and he tells him, I'll pray to all my gods. And he tells him thanks. And we see that in a way, Ahmad is detailing and writing his story.
Yeah. So that it lives forever. That's very good. Yeah, it's a good film.
Very good film. Highly recommend it. We really haven't done any bad films. Everybody who's sponsored films. Again, major shout out to Caravaggio, who's in the chat. God bless you, brother. Thank you very much for sponsoring today's stream. And do I recommend The 13th Warrior? I absolutely do. Do I recommend Beowulf? I absolutely do. So these were two good reviews that I think we've said everything that needs to be said. It's a great representation of masculinity, courage, bravery, loyalty, and the ways in which we self-sacrifice to perpetuate or maintain order against chaos.
Yeah, I'll in my part of the analysis of this with quoting something from The Wanderer, which is contemporary with Beowulf. It's a narrative poem, and one of the motifs that resides and sort of overrides Beowulf and the Anglo-Saxon poems. There are two. One is mutability, the idea of mutability, that life is changeable, and the other is something in literature called the ubi sunt motif, which means where are those who have gone before. So, and that's important because that's what they say in the film about, you know, my ancestors are waiting for me, prepare a place for me. You know, thou preparest a place at the table of mine enemies, but you know, that, you know, my cup runneth over, right? That we live life, and the people that we cherish are going to go. We're going to go. The people that we cherish are going to go. And one of the hardest things in life is saying goodbye to a friend. And you're left with this sort of heart in desolation, but you have to keep going. And in the Wanderer here, he says, he who these ruins rightly sees and deeply considers this dark, twisted life, who sagely remembers the endless slaughters of a bloody past, is bound to proclaim, where is the war steed? Where is the warrior? Where is his warlord? Where now the feasting places? Where now the mead hall pleasures? Alas, bright cup. Alas, brave knight. All gone, lost in the night, as you never had lived, and all that survives you, a serpentine wall. So we're left with carrying. We have to carry on. I think the hardest part a lot of times in life is being alone, being solitary in isolation, but we have to keep going on with things because we have to carry what we've learned from the people who came before us. So
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. Yeah, the movie and Beowulf as an epic, I mean, really, what you know, it's getting at the importance of the ways in which we choose to live our lives with the opportunity that we have. And you know, whether it's their depiction of fate or destiny, it's about how you respond to what life brings you. And if you have courage, bravery, and loyalty to your people, and it's not shying away from death, you know, like again, the Disney-esque type endings where everybody lives happily ever after. It's recognizing that death is the conclusion of all of us. But what makes Beowulf or Beowulf and the 13th Warrior, what makes them so profound? What makes it so that everybody's gathered around as the man sacrificed, killed the two enemies he needed, completed the mission of why the king asked them to come defend, and now he's no longer there. But what he did with the opportunities he had, that's why he is the legend. That's why he has the impact. And I think that that's the overall meaning.
Yeah. It's you mentioned Disney, and it's the status quo now is to return to Disney and return to your childhood in a sort of infantilized fairy tale. But the virtuous thing to do is, you know, when I was a child, I thought like a child, right? I talked like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. You can use your past as a springboard for the future, and you think of the lessons you learned in the past, and you can go back to your past in your mind, but you can't ever go back. Right. You know, you have to keep going forward. And like you said, you know, this guy, he passes away in a glorious moment, facing death that he welcomes because he's given his all. He serves. He's selfless for his people. And that, of course, that's what makes Beowulf the epic poem that it is that the warrior passes away. And at the end of Beowulf, the epilogue of Beowulf is that, you know, Arthur orders them to bring back his sword, and, you know, and he gives the sword away. And that's great. This is slightly different. He orders them to build a tower and call it Beowulf's Tower, and they'll circle around it all the time and remember him. But it's an outward symbol of the bulwark of what he stood for his people. The hall gets torn down, the people get torn down, but they rebuild and they have to get back up, and they remember this glorious hero, and they can take those lessons. I mean, it's the 13th warrior. It's almost like Beowulf has a squad, a cadre of disciples in a way that are going to fan out and are going to continue his work. Right. And so that's what he does.
Absolutely. Again, thank you to Caravaggio for the sponsorship of today's stream. Everybody in the chats, give him a voice of appreciation. BLA, let us know what the people sent in.
Yeah, let's see what the folks at home have to say.
If you guys have any comments, questions, or you want to support my work, you can use Streamlabs, Dono Chat, or YouTube, or give some COTEL Crew memberships if you would be interested. And if you would like to support BLA, he's got over on his channel, the PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App links are all set up, and you can send in anything that you would like to show appreciation and love for our brother BLA.
Yes, thank you to Jason right there for dropping those links. Really appreciate it. Shouts out to Mark right there who drops $20 in Cash App. No comment. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, homeboy. There. Thank you so much. Hey, shouts out to Jason who dropped $15 on PayPal. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let's see if there's any. I don't think there's any super chats in here. If you want to drop a super chat, of course you can do that. I think that might be it. Shouts out to Ethan who dropped $9 earlier on Cash App before the stream started. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, Ethan. Thank you, buddy. And thanks for all the memberships, everybody's that's got a membership to my channel. I just did a member stream the other night on this new movie, Strange Darling. That was like, I think yesterday. So you
That's
can go
a new
check out.
movie? I've never heard of
Yeah,
it.
it just came out Friday, and I've already done an analysis of it.
Wow.
And a lot of times I do analyses.
You
of
watch
movies
it in theater?
that have just come out. No, I did not. I couldn't get over to see it, but I did watch it.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're
but
picking up my
I would-
methods here.
Yeah, I would recommend watching it. I mean, it's like I said, you can watch people can watch the analysis, but it's a most dangerous game serial killer movie, but with a twist that I didn't expect. And that's saying something because I'm pretty good at predicting movies like right away in a movie. And one of the reasons is shout out to my friend Paul out there who put me onto this movie, and I went and I saw it, and he said, don't read or anything about don't even read a synopsis. Don't look at any trailers and go into it fresh. He knew exactly what I would like, and it's pretty good. It's really good to see a brand new movie
I'm excited to hear that there is a new film that's gets a BLA.
Yeah.
Is it 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb up, one?
Yeah, I'd give it 2 thumbs up. I mean,
thumbs up.
it's not for everybody, and it gets pretty dark, but it was interesting how they took the most dangerous game and they took a serial killer movie and they twisted it, and it was an unexpected twist that I actually really appreciate. I like the actors in it too as well. Giovanni Ribisi, the actor, it's his first foray into being a cinematographer for the movie. I really, I like seeing an original movie. Hey, shouts out to I'm gonna say Aiden right there who drops on PayPal $100. Big time shout out to you. Big time supporter right there. Drop that PayPal. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. That's big time. If you want to sponsor a stream for us, you can do that with DPH. You can go to his links. You can go to mine and give us a list of things to cover. We've covered over 20 movies. I've got a list of that's a minimum of 20 movies that we've covered, not to mention the multiple movies sometimes that we've done in the streams and other streams. So I hope everybody gets a membership to Church of the Eternal Logos. If you should have a membership to that, you should subscribe to that channel right there. Subscribe to my channel if you're watching this later, and think about supporting us.
Absolutely. I also want to give a special thank you to AC for donating $100 today. Thank you so much, brother. He said, hey, bro, would you mind sharing this fundraiser for my friend's kid? He's getting a heart transplant, and I do have that pulled up. So for everybody who would like to support AC's friend, let me share the here's this, and then I'll share the link with everybody. Thank you so much, AC, for the support. Really appreciate you, brother. And I'm going to put that in the chat right here. Let me put it in this one so it goes to all of them. There you go. There's the GoFundMe. Prayers for Quinn. I hope he's able to get the medical care that he needs. God bless him. And thank you so much, AC, for the support. I really appreciate that, brother. I had one on YouTube, Luchador 1764 throws in $5, says BLA, go hard. You feel me? Raspy diner waitress voice on God. DBH
No
goes
cap.
pretty hard too.
Yeah, no cap. Okay. We got a steak on the sizzle, side of sunshine coming up. There you go.
Right. And that's all I got over on my end. So major thank you to AC for the support. And thank you very much, Luchador 1764. God bless you, brother. So that looks like that's going to do it. Again, a major thank you to Caravaggio. If you would like to support or sponsor a stream, rather, on my channel, you can do so with this link right here. And I can do any topic per se that you'd be interested in. If you'd like to do a film analysis, You can also purchase that, and I'll contact BLA and we can set up a time in which that would be convenient for both of us. So thank you guys. BLA, is there anything you want to say before hopping off here?
Yeah. I hope everybody's having a great September. I'm so glad to be in September, man. We're in the Burr months now.
Oh,
As they
fall's
say
my
on
favorite
the-
season. Fall
Me
just,
too, buddy.
it just I love that crisp air, that 60
right.
degree air.
I like that cool, crisp air. That I like the mid 50s, cold, raining,
Ooh.
dark skies. That's what I like.
Why'd you leave Ireland then?
That's right. With some Twilight music playing, right? So hey, we both got birthdays coming up in
That's
a couple.
true.
Mine's in a couple weeks. Yours is in 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a big
What
month.
day's yours?
14th. And
14th?
yeah,
Yeah,
I know when yours is
22nd.
because it's the same as a lot of my loved ones. And so I'm sure we'll both be doing things for that. Also, keep an eye out because sometime soon I'm going to be having a big stream with Jamie talking about Prince Harry and Prince Harry's autobiography. So that one is actually going to be very entertaining. So I think you're going to be
Very
surprised by that stream. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I will be back with a stream later this week, another sponsored stream. We'll be going over the history of the Serbian Orthodox Church, its important saints, martyrs, and a sort of contemporary context for the Serbian Church. And I think I got an open panel planned for later this week. So I'll see you guys later this week. BLA, thank you, brother. Love you.
Thanks, man.
God bless
Appreciate
you and all your work, man. Wish you the best.
You too,
And
buddy.
if anybody's on my channel, his link is hyperlinked in the title, so you can go over to his channel and support. But all right, guys, I'll see you later. As always, until next time, God bless.